Look at a map of the world. Really look at it. Not the way you glance at it in a textbook. Not the way it flashes on a screen during a geography class you've already forgotten. Really look. Because there is a country sitting on that map that should not exist the way it does. Its shape makes no sense. Its location defies logic. Its borders look like someone drew them while distracted. Half of it is on one landmass. The other half is on a completely different island, separated by 400 miles of open sea. And somehow, against every geographical principle that says countries like this fail, this one didn't. This one thrived. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why Malaysia's geography isn't just strange. It's the reason Malaysia became one of the most strategically important and quietly powerful countries in the entire world. But wait! Before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment "I subscribe" below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Let me ask you something. When you think about powerful countries, countries that control trade, that shape global economies, that sit at the center of the world's most important decisions, what comes to mind? America, China, Germany, maybe Singapore if you're paying attention. Malaysia probably doesn't make your list. And that's exactly the problem. Because you've been looking at power the wrong way. Most people think power comes from size. Russia is enormous. Canada is vast. Brazil stretches across an entire continent. And yet none of these countries control what Malaysia controls. Most people think power comes from military might. The United States spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined. And yet American aircraft carriers have to pass through waters that Malaysia sits beside. Most people think power comes from population. China, India, Indonesia. Billions of people generating billions of decisions every single day. And yet Malaysia, with its 33 million people, sits at a choke point so critical that if it closed tomorrow, the global economy would go into cardiac arrest within weeks. 33 million people. Controlling the fate of 8 billion. How? The answer is geography. But not geography the way you learned it in school. Here's what your geography teacher never told you. Geography isn't just about where a country is. It's about what that location does. It's about what flows through it. What passes beside it. What cannot exist without it. And Malaysia's location, this strange, split, seemingly illogical arrangement of land and sea, is one of the most powerful geographical positions any country has ever occupied. But to understand why, I need to take you back. Not a few years back. Centuries. Imagine you're a merchant in the year 1200. You're in China. You have silk, porcelain, tea, things the entire world wants. And you need to get them to India, to Arabia, to East Africa, to the Mediterranean. You look at a map. There are two options. Option 1. Sail north, through the freezing waters above Asia, fighting brutal currents and impossible weather. Nobody does this. Option 2. Sail south, down the coast of Southeast Asia, toward a narrow strip of water between two landmasses. This is the only real route. This narrow strip of water, roughly 550 miles long, in some places less than 2 miles wide, is the Strait of Malacca. And Malaysia owns most of it. Now pause on that for a moment. 2 miles wide. In some sections. 2 miles. The English Channel, the famous waterway between Britain and France, is roughly 21 miles at its narrowest point. The Strait of Malacca gets down to 2. And through those 2 miles passes roughly 40% of global trade. Not Southeast Asian trade. Not regional trade. Global trade. 1/3 of the world's oil. A massive share of liquefied natural gas. Manufactured goods. Electronics. Food. Raw materials. Every single day. Ships so large they barely fit. A constant procession of commerce that never stops, never sleeps, never pauses. And Malaysia sits right there. Watching. Controlling. Existing. But here's what surprised me when I really started digging into this. The strait is only part of the story. Because Malaysia's geography does something even more unusual than simply sitting beside an important waterway. It splits itself in two. And that split, that seemingly bizarre decision to have a country exist on two separate pieces of land, turns out to be one of the most strategically intelligent geographical arrangements in the modern world. Even if nobody planned it that way. Look at Malaysia on a map again. On the left, Peninsular Malaysia. The long finger of land extending south from Thailand. This is where Kuala Lumpur sits. Where most of the population lives. Where the economic and political center of gravity has always been. On the right, East Malaysia. Borneo, Sabah and Sarawak. Two massive states carved out of the world's third largest island. Together they make up more than half of Malaysia's total land area, and contain some of the most extraordinary terrain, biodiversity, and natural resources on Earth. Between them, 400 miles of the South China Sea. These two halves are separated by open ocean. No land bridge. No tunnel. No physical connection. Just water. And on that same island, Borneo, two other countries exist. Brunei, one of the wealthiest nations per capita on the planet, sits inside Sarawak like a small island surrounded by Malaysian territory. Indonesia controls the southern portion of Borneo, called Kalimantan, which is massive. Enormous. Largely undeveloped. 3 countries. 1 island. This is not normal. Now here's where it gets strange. Most countries that are physically split, that have territory separated by sea, struggle with identity. With governance. With economic cohesion. Think about how hard it is to build national unity when your citizens can't drive to each other. When half your country requires a flight to reach. When the ocean literally divides what the Constitution says is one nation. Pakistan tried this. In 1947, Pakistan was created as 2 separate territories, West Pakistan and East Pakistan, divided by 1,000 miles of Indian territory in between. 24 years later, East Pakistan declared independence and became Bangladesh. The geography won. The country split. Malaysia looked at this same problem. Same basic challenge. 2 separate landmasses. Ocean between them. And somehow, Malaysia held together. More than held together. It built a functional, growing, increasingly prosperous nation across both halves. Why? Why did Malaysia succeed where Pakistan failed? The answer isn't political will. It isn't military strength. It isn't even economics. It's deeper than that. And it starts with understanding what Borneo actually is. Sarawak alone is larger than the entire peninsula of Malaysia. Let that sink in. The part of Malaysia that most people never think about, the part that doesn't have Kuala Lumpur, doesn't have Penang, doesn't have the famous food and the gleaming towers, is bigger than the part they do think about. And it's not just big. It's ancient. The rainforests of Borneo are among the oldest on Earth. Some estimates put them at 130 million years old. Older than the Amazon. Older than almost any other ecosystem still functioning today. They contain species that exist nowhere else. Plants that evolved in isolation for millions of years. Rivers that run deep into interiors that still aren't fully mapped. The caves of Sarawak contain the largest cave chamber in the world, Sarawak Chamber, so enormous that it could fit 40 Boeing 747s inside it with room to spare. And underneath all of this ancient, extraordinary landscape? Oil. Natural gas. Timber. Resources that, in the 1970s and 1980s, transformed Malaysia from a developing nation into something else entirely. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about. The way Malaysia uses its geography isn't just about what it sits beside or what it sits on top of. It's about what its geography forces it to become. Think about this. When you're a country split across 2 landmasses, separated by open ocean, you have 2 choices. You can let the geography divide you. Or you can build systems so strong that the ocean becomes irrelevant. Malaysia chose the second option. And the results are remarkable. Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA, handles more than 60 million passengers per year in normal times. It is consistently ranked among the best airports in the world. Not because Malaysia is the most popular tourist destination, but because Malaysia's geography makes it a hub. When you're positioned exactly where Malaysia is positioned, at the intersection of East Asia, South Asia, Oceania, and the Middle East, every airline route in the region passes nearby. AirAsia understood this before almost anyone. A Malaysian budget airline that launched in 2001 and grew to connect more destinations across Asia than almost any carrier on Earth. Not because it had the most money, because it launched from the right geography, from the center of the most populated region on the planet. And then there's the port. Port Klang, Malaysia's main shipping terminal, is consistently ranked among the top 15 busiest container ports in the world. For comparison, the United States' busiest port, Los Angeles, handles roughly similar volumes. But Malaysia's economy is a fraction of America's size. What explains a port that large? Geography. Every ship moving through the Strait of Malacca passes Port Klang. Every one. So Malaysian ports aren't just serving Malaysian trade. They're serving the world's trade. Passing through. Loading. Unloading. Transferring. Moving on. Malaysia became the middleman for global commerce almost by accident of location. But here's what surprised me most. And this is the part that genuinely stopped me when I first understood it. Malaysia's geography doesn't just give it trade power. It gives it a kind of power that's almost impossible to replicate. Irreplaceable power. Think about what it would take to route global trade away from the Strait of Malacca. You'd need an alternative route between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. There are options on paper. The Lombok Strait, between Bali and Lombok in Indonesia, is deeper and wider. Supertankers that can't fit through Malacca sometimes use it. The Sunda Strait, between Java and Sumatra, is another option. But here's the problem. Both of these alternatives add significant distance. Days of sailing. Thousands of dollars in fuel per voyage. When you're moving millions of containers per year, those extra days and dollars become billions. So the world keeps using Malacca. Not because there's no alternative. Because the alternative is too expensive. Malaysia's geography created a natural monopoly. Not through conquest. Not through negotiation. Not through any human decision. The water just happens to be narrower there. The route just happens to be shorter there. And Malaysia just happens to sit exactly there. Now here's where I need to tell you about something that most geography discussions miss entirely. Because we've been talking about Malaysia as if its geography is static. Fixed. Permanent. But geography is never just about the land. It's about what the land does to the people. And what Malaysia's geography did to its people is one of the most fascinating stories in Southeast Asia. Because of where Malaysia sits, at this intersection of civilizations, at this crossroads of trade routes, it became a destination. For thousands of years, Chinese traders came and stayed. They integrated. They intermarried. They became something new, the Peranakan, a culture that exists nowhere else on Earth. Part Chinese, part Malay, entirely Malaysian. Indian traders and labourers came for the rubber plantations the British established. They stayed. They built temples beside mosques beside Chinese clan houses in the same neighborhoods. The British themselves came for the tin and the rubber, resources that Malaya's geography happened to produce in abundance, and spent 170 years reshaping the administrative, legal, and linguistic landscape. Arabs came through the strait and brought Islam, which took root so deeply that it became the official religion of the Federation. And through all of this, through all these waves of arrival, all these cultures, all these languages and religions and food traditions, the geography kept forcing them together. Because the strait doesn't care about ethnicity. The trade route doesn't discriminate by religion. The location pulled everyone in. And they had to figure out how to share the space. This is the part that I think is genuinely underappreciated. Most multicultural countries became multicultural through conquest or colonization, where one group dominated others. Malaysia's multiculturalism has a different origin story. Yes, there was colonization. Yes, there were power imbalances. Yes, there are ethnic tensions that continue today. But underneath all of that is a geographical reality that forced coexistence long before any government mandated it. Traders need customers. Customers need goods. Commerce requires communication. Communication requires understanding. The Strait created an economy that required cooperation across cultural lines. And over centuries, that cooperation became culture. The food, the languages, the architecture, the festivals. All of it traces back, somehow, to the fact that Malaysia sits where it sits. But I want to show you something even stranger. Something that demonstrates just how unusual Malaysia's geographical situation actually is. Let's talk about the South China Sea. The South China Sea is one of the most contested bodies of water on Earth. China claims almost all of it, a sweeping assertion that cuts through the maritime zones of Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. This isn't a minor diplomatic dispute. This is one of the central geopolitical tensions of the 21st century. China has built artificial islands, deployed naval vessels, installed military equipment on reefs that international courts have ruled are not theirs. And Malaysia sits right in the middle of this. East Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak, faces directly onto the South China Sea. Malaysian oil and gas fields lie in waters China claims as its own. Malaysian fishing communities work in waters Chinese Coast Guard vessels patrol. This is not an abstract geopolitical drama happening somewhere else. This is happening in Malaysia's front yard. Every single day. And yet Malaysia has navigated this with a kind of diplomatic precision that larger countries have failed to achieve. It doesn't confront China directly. It doesn't capitulate completely. It walks a line, maintaining relationships with Beijing while quietly reinforcing its own claims, quietly strengthening its own presence, quietly building economic ties with China while also deepening security arrangements with the United States. This isn't weakness. This is the strategy of a country that understands exactly what it is. A small nation. In a large game. With geographical assets too valuable to lose. Malaysia can't win a military confrontation with China. But it doesn't need to. Because China needs the Strait of Malacca as much as Malaysia does. China's oil imports, the fuel that runs the world's second largest economy, pass through the Strait of Malacca. More than 80% of them. This is what Chinese strategists call the Malacca dilemma. The most powerful country in Asia is dependent on a waterway it doesn't control. That sits beside a country with 33 million people. Geography created a balance of power that military might alone could never produce. But here's where the story gets even more layered. Because Malaysia's geography doesn't just create strategic advantages. It creates vulnerabilities. Real ones. Ones that keep Malaysian policymakers awake at night. Think about what it means to be dependent on a strait. The same geography that gives Malaysia power also makes it a target. If the Strait of Malacca were ever blocked, by conflict, by accident, by deliberate action, Malaysia would be at the center of a global crisis. The pressure would be immense. From every direction. From every major power on Earth. This is the paradox of Malaysia's position. The geography that makes it powerful also makes it vulnerable. The location that gives it leverage also gives others leverage over it. And there's another vulnerability that geography created. Malaysia's split nature, Peninsular Malaysia and East Malaysia, means it must maintain connection across 400 miles of sea. Cut those sea lanes and East Malaysia is isolated. In 2013, this became more than theoretical. A group of Filipino militants crossed the Sulu Sea and landed in Sabah, the northern tip of East Malaysia, claiming a historical territorial right to the land. The Malaysian military responded. There was violence. People died. And for a moment, the vulnerability of having territory separated by ocean became very, very real. East Malaysia isn't just geographically separate. It's exposed. Facing the Philippines to the northeast. facing the contested South China Sea to the northwest, facing Indonesia to the south, surrounded by neighbors, separated from the capital by open water. This is the price of the geography. The same ocean that enables trade also enables incursion. But here's what I keep coming back to. Despite all of this, despite the split territory, the contested waters, the great power competition happening in its front yard, the historical tensions, the colonial legacy, the complexity of holding together a multicultural nation across two separate landmasses, Malaysia works. Not perfectly. Not without problems. Not without corruption and political dysfunction and ongoing inequality. But it works. The economy grows. The infrastructure improves. The ports keep moving cargo. The airports keep moving people. The food keeps getting better. The cities keep building upward. And I keep asking myself, how? How does a country with this geography, this complicated, split, exposed, contested, pressured geography, hold together? The answer I keep arriving at is this. Malaysia doesn't work despite its geography. Malaysia works because of its geography. The same forces that created complexity created capability. The same location that attracted invasion attracted trade. The same multicultural pressure that created tension created resilience. The same strait that makes Malaysia vulnerable also makes Malaysia indispensable. And indispensable countries don't disappear. They adapt. They negotiate. They find the path between the great powers. They build systems sophisticated enough to hold together what geography pulled apart. There's a concept in geopolitics called a pivot state. A pivot state is a country whose geographical position gives it disproportionate influence over regional stability. Turkey is a pivot state, sitting between Europe, Russia, and the Middle East. Poland is a pivot state, sitting between Western Europe and Russia. Pakistan is a pivot state, sitting between China, India, Iran, and Afghanistan. Malaysia is a pivot state. But it's a quiet one. It doesn't announce itself the way Turkey does. It doesn't position itself as the indispensable middle ground the way Pakistan sometimes tries to. It just exists. In the right place. At the right time. Doing what the geography demands. I want to leave you with one image. Stand on the shore of the Strait of Malacca at night. You can do this in Malacca City, or in Penang, or in dozens of smaller coastal towns. Stand there and look out at the water, and in the darkness, you'll see lights. Not stars. Ships. A constant procession of lights moving slowly through the narrow water. So many lights that the strait looks like a floating city. Container ships carrying the goods that fill the stores you shop in. Tankers carrying the oil that runs the cars you drive. Bulk carriers moving the raw materials that build the buildings you live in. All of it. All the invisible machinery of modern life. Passing through this narrow strip of water. Beside this small country. That most people can't find on a map. Malaysia's geography is insane. And the world depends on it every single day. Without knowing it. Without acknowledging it. Without saying thank you. If this video changed the way you see Malaysia, or the way you see geography itself, subscribe. Because this is exactly what we do here. We find the stories hiding in plain sight. The things the world walks past without looking at. Like this video if it made you think differently. And drop a comment below. What other country do you think has geography this underrated? I read every single one. See you in the next one.